Unlock the door to mystery with one very short story. The micro-podcast filled with morally complex characters, twists you won't predict, and endings you won't forget. Every episode is a brief, intense journey, perfect for listeners who crave mystery, intrigue, and stories that leave you thinking long after the tale ends. Today's episode begins now. Sometimes you've got to break your own rules, if only to keep the audience on edge. This week, no quick hit, no bite-sized tale you can knock out between emails. Instead, I'm throwing you into the deep end. A full-length thriller. No warning. No warm-up. Just chaos and consequences. It's an experiment, a gamble, a glitch in the matrix. So now I need you to play critic. Should I stick with the short-form mayhem you're used to, or start slipping you longer doses of psychological damage? Drop a comment. Hit me up at jlstroudjr.com. Say something. Hell, say anything. I'm listening. And now, here's this week's mind bender, the body double. It started with a scream, the kind that slices through champagne clinks and forced laughter like a razor through silk. The sound bounced off the concrete walls of the Chateau Marmont's parking garage, echoing until it became something that made your skin crawl and your stomach drop like you just stepped off a cliff. At first, nobody at the afterparty believed it. Drama was the currency of choice in Los Angeles, and the chateau had been dealing in it for decades. Someone was probably just having another meltdown over a bad review or a canceled audition. It happened every night in this city of broken dreams. But then the whispers started spreading like wildfire through the crowd of beautiful people. Then the cell phones came out, glowing like tiny torches in the dim party lighting. Then the photos leaked across social media faster than anyone could stop them. The body was discovered crumpled in the parking garage like a broken doll, arms twisted at impossible angles that made your bones ache just looking at them. Blood pooled around a platinum wig that had shifted sideways, revealing dark roots underneath. The red liquid seeped into the concrete, mixing with motor oil and cigarette butts, creating a stain that would never quite wash clean. The woman wore a designer dress, emerald green Gucci, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Her makeup was perfect, even in death. Red lips slightly parted, as if she'd been about to say something important when the life left her body. They said Lena Vale was dead. News vans arrived within an hour, their bright lights turning the parking garage into a stage. Reporters with perfect hair and practiced expressions spoke into cameras, their voices carrying the weight of tragedy mixed with barely concealed excitement. This was the story that would make careers. But here's the thing about Los Angeles. Nothing is ever quite what it seems. Lena Vale was very much alive, but she hadn't known that anyone thought otherwise until 20 minutes ago. She'd been driving to another industry party in her silver Tesla, dressed down in faded jeans and a simple black t-shirt, her attempt at flying under the radar for once. The oversized sunglasses that covered half her face were more than just a fashion statement. They were armor against the constant scrutiny that came with fame. The radio had been playing softly, some mindless pop song she'd heard 1,000 times, when the music cut to breaking news. Beloved starlet Lena Vale was discovered murdered late last night outside the exclusive Chateau Marmont Hotel. Her hands had jerked on the steering wheel so hard, she'd nearly swerved into oncoming traffic. The words hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Dead. She was dead. Heart hammering against her ribs, she'd pulled into the first place she saw, a rundown motel in Burbank with a flickering neon sign that promised clean rooms and weekly rates. The kind of place where people went to disappear. At the front desk, a bored clerk with nicotine-stained fingers barely looked up from his magazine when she approached. Her voice had come out smaller than intended when she'd said, "I need a room." "Name?" he'd asked, still not looking at her. For the first time in years, she'd given her real name. Rebecca Straight. Becky. The name felt strange on her tongue, like speaking a foreign language she'd once been fluent in. Rebecca Becky Straight, the girl from Ohio who dreamed of making it in Hollywood. The girl who died the day Lena Vale was born. Now she stood barefoot on the stained carpet of room 237, her toes curling against the rough fibers that smelled like decades of cigarette smoke and broken dreams. A half-smoked cigarette trembled between her fingers, the ash growing longer with each shaky breath. Mascara had streaked down her cheeks in black rivers, creating war paint across her pale skin. The television muttered in the corner, its blue glow casting strange shadows across the peeling wallpaper. She'd turned it on the moment she'd gotten to the room, desperate to confirm that what she'd heard on the radio was real and not some stress-induced hallucination. But there it was, in living color. Crime scene tape, flashing police lights, and reporters with perfect hair delivering the news of her death with practiced solemnity. The victim was found wearing the same emerald Gucci dress Vale had worn to a press event earlier that evening. She laughed once. The sound came out ugly and hollow, like something breaking inside her chest. "God," she whispered to the empty room, her voice hoarse from crying. "They really think I'm dead. And they should think that." The woman in the garage had looked exactly like her. Same sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, same frosted pink lips, same emerald Gucci dress from the press junket earlier that day. Even the same expensive perfume, that French stuff that smelled like jasmine and secrets. Her name had been Sia Martin, 26 years old, body double by profession. She'd been hired for the dangerous stunts, the crowd-dodging escapes, and the occasional paparazzi bait when Lena needed to be in two places at once. Sia was paid well for the work, but not nearly enough to die for it. Lena sank onto the motel bed, which squealed in protest under her weight. The springs were shot, probably had been for years. She could feel each metal coil through the thin mattress, pressing against her spine like accusations. Someone had wanted her dead. Really, truly dead. And now they thought they'd succeeded. The realization hit her like ice water in her veins. Whoever had killed Sia thought they were killing her, which meant they were probably celebrating right now, toasting their success while Sia's body grew cold in some morgue downtown. The first rule of being famous is that nobody really knows you. Lena had learned this lesson early in her career. back when she was still naive enough to think authenticity mattered in Hollywood. She'd mastered the art of the perfect smile. Not too wide, not too small, just mysterious enough to keep people guessing. She'd perfected the coy laugh that made interviewers lean forward, hungry for more. She could deliver a 3-second soundbite for any question, no matter how personal or invasive. Authenticity was just another performance, and she'd been performing for so long that she'd almost forgotten who she really was underneath all the makeup and carefully crafted responses. Now, presumed dead, she finally felt real again. She changed into clothes no paparazzi would ever expect to see her wearing. Faded jeans with holes in the knees, a gray hoodie that smelled like the thrift store she'd bought it from years ago, and beat-up sneakers that had seen better decades. She pulled the hood up over her distinctive blonde hair and stepped out into the Los Angeles sunlight. For the first time in years, she was completely anonymous. People walked past her on the sidewalk without a second glance. No cameras flashed. No one screamed her name or begged for autographs. She was just another face in the crowd, invisible and free. The feeling was intoxicating. But freedom came with a price, and Lena knew she had work to do. She had 3 objectives burning in her mind like neon signs. Find out who killed Sia. Figure out if they'd meant to kill her instead. Decide whether she wanted to come back from the dead. The 3rd objective scared her more than the first 2 combined. Her first stop was Max Cooper, her manager since the beginning. Max had discovered her when she was 22, waiting tables at a diner in North Hollywood and bleaching her teeth in her apartment sink because she couldn't afford a dentist. He'd promised to make her a star, and he'd delivered on that promise. But promises in Hollywood always came with hidden costs. She found him outside his Beverly Hills office, stepping out of a black SUV that probably cost more than most people's houses. His phone was glued to his ear like it had been surgically attached, and his Rolex caught the afternoon sunlight, sending little rainbows dancing across the sidewalk. Lena positioned herself across the street, hidden behind a newspaper stand, and watched. She'd always been good at reading lips, a skill she'd picked up during her early auditions when directors would whisper about her while she pretended not to notice. "Yes, I'm absolutely devastated," Max was saying into his phone, his face a mask of practiced grief. "She was like family to me, like a daughter." Right, family. The kind of family that took 40% of everything you earned and made decisions about your life without asking your opinion. Lena followed him at a distance as he walked toward an upscale sushi restaurant in West Hollywood. The kind of place where a single roll cost more than minimum wage workers made in a day. But instead of going inside, Max chose a table on the outdoor patio, probably to enjoy the perfect 70-degree weather that made Los Angeles feel like a movie set. Lena ducked behind a parked Mercedes across the street, her heart hammering against her ribs. From here, she had a clear view of Max's table, but she was far enough away that he wouldn't spot her even if he looked directly in her direction. She pulled out her iPhone, grateful for the powerful camera that could zoom in close enough to count the pores on someone's nose. Through the screen, she watched Max settle into his chair, still talking on his phone. She could make out his lips moving, but the distance made it impossible to read them clearly. A woman approached his table, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, wearing a power suit that screamed agent or lawyer, or possibly both. Max ended his call and stood to greet her with the kind of fake Hollywood hug that involved no actual physical contact. Lena's finger hovered over her phone screen, zooming in as far as the camera would allow. She could see their mouths moving, but catching every word required intense concentration. Her mother had always said she was too stubborn for her own good, but right now that stubbornness was the only thing keeping her focused. Part of her wanted to march across the street and confront Max directly, demand answers, scream at him until he told her the truth about what had happened to Sia. The old Lena, the one who'd been performing for cameras her entire adult life, would have done exactly that. She would have made a scene, created drama, turned her pain into content for the gossip blogs. But something held her back. Maybe it was the memory of Sia's body, a warning in itself not to trust anyone. Maybe it was the cold realization that someone wanted her dead. Or maybe it was just survival instinct finally kicking in after years of living in a bubble of manufactured safety. Who could she trust? The question gnawed at her like a physical ache. Her mother back in Ohio? Linda Straight had never understood her daughter's choice to leave home and chase fame in Los Angeles. They talked maybe twice a year now, stilted conversations full of unspoken disappointment and mutual incomprehension. Could she call her mother and say, "Hi, Mom. I'm not actually dead, but someone tried to kill me. Can you help?" The absurdity of it made her stomach clench. What about her close friends? But as she mentally scrolled through her contacts, she realized with growing horror that most of the people she called friends were really just industry connections. People who smiled at her at parties and posed for photos, but would sell her secrets to TMZ for the right price. The few genuine friendships she'd had from before fame had withered under the pressure of her new life. Casualties of her transformation from Becky Straight to Lena Vale. Charlie. Charlie Cruz was the only person who'd never wanted anything from her, except honest work and fair pay. But even Charlie was part of the industry, part of the machine that had somehow produced a killer. She had to trust someone eventually, didn't she? The alternative was spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows, never knowing if the next person she met was friend or enemy. Through her phone screen, she watched Max lean forward, his expression intense. Lena adjusted the zoom and focused on his lips, pushing aside her spiraling thoughts to concentrate on the conversation that might hold the key to everything. "She's dead," Max was saying, stabbing at a dragon roll with unnecessary force. "But the catalog's still hot. We can license the unreleased tracks, maybe push for a posthumous biopic." The woman nodded, making notes on a tablet. "And the insurance situation?" Max's smile was sharp enough to cut. $20 million. Already filed the paperwork this morning. Lena's phone nearly slipped from her trembling hands. $20 million. An insurance policy she'd never known existed, buried somewhere in the mountain of contracts she'd signed over the years without reading carefully enough. So Max had a motive, a $20 million motive. But was he stupid enough to be this sloppy about it? Or was he just confident that dead women don't eavesdrop on business lunches? That night, Lena returned to her own house. She parked 3 blocks away and walked through the winding streets of the Hollywood Hills, keeping her hood up and her head down. Even in the darkness, she could see the evidence of her alleged death everywhere. Flowers and teddy bears were piled against her front gate. Candles flickered on the sidewalk, creating a makeshift shrine that made her stomach turn. Someone had spray-painted "Rip Lena" on the retaining wall in silver letters. A tour bus rumbled past, its windows filled with faces pressed against the glass, phones recording everything. The guide's voice carried through the night air. And this is where beloved actress Lena Vale lived before her tragic murder, just 2 days ago. Lena ducked behind a neighbor's hedge until the bus disappeared around the corner. The morbid curiosity was worse than she'd expected. In life, she'd dealt with paparazzi and fans, but this was different. This was vulture-like, feeding on tragedy and death. She waited another 10 minutes, watching for any sign of photographers lurking in the shadows or more tour buses making their rounds. When she was satisfied the coast was clear, she approached her own front door like a stranger, keys trembling in her hand. The alarm code hadn't changed. Why would it? As far as the world knew, the homeowner was dead. The familiar beep of the security system felt surreal, like a ghost haunting her own life. The house felt like a mausoleum. Photos of her face stared back from every wall, frozen in various degrees of glamour and fake happiness. Magazine covers, movie posters, red carpet shots where she looked like she was having the time of her life. All lies, beautifully photographed lies. In her walk-in closet, 6 identical platinum wigs hung on mannequin heads like a row of ghosts. Costumes for the character she'd been playing for years. Lena sat at her vanity, staring into the mirror surrounded by Hollywood bulbs. Her reflection looked strange without the makeup, without the perfect hair, without the practiced smile. She looked younger, more vulnerable, more human. "Why you, Sia?" she whispered to the empty room. The silence felt oppressive, like the house itself was holding its breath. Lena wandered through the rooms aimlessly, touching familiar objects that now felt foreign. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. She was a ghost, haunting her own life. In the kitchen, she noticed the red light blinking on her landline answering machine. She'd forgotten she even had the thing. Who left voicemails anymore? But muscle memory made her press the play button. "You have 3 new messages," the mechanical voice announced. The first was from her publicist, time-stamped 2:15 p.m. "Lena, hey, just confirming you're still planning to skip the Vanity Fair thing tonight. I know you said you needed a break, but they're really hoping you'll reconsider. Call me back." The second was from a reporter, time-stamped 4:30 p.m. "Ms. Vale, this is Jennifer Chen from Entertainment Tonight. We're doing a piece on body doubles in Hollywood and would love to get your perspective on working with stunt performers. Could you give me a call back?" Lena's stomach clenched. A story about body doubles, left just hours before Sia was killed. The timing felt like a sick joke. The third message made her freeze. "Lena, it's Sia." The voice was barely above a whisper, tight with fear. Time-stamped 8:47 p.m. "I know you probably don't even know my last name, but I need to talk to you. Something's wrong, really wrong. I heard Max on the phone today, and God, I don't know who else to trust. I think someone's planning to hurt you. I'm at my apartment, 1247 Spring Street, Unit 4B. Please, if you get this, come find me. I have proof of what they're planning. I'm scared, Lena. I'm really scared." Just 2 hours before Sia was found dead in the parking garage. Lena's hands shook as she replayed the message, Sia's terrified voice echoing through the empty kitchen. The woman had tried to warn her, had tried to save her, and she died for it. 1247 Spring Street, Unit 4B. Lena grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Sia had said she had proof. If there was any chance that evidence still existed, Lena needed to find it before whoever killed Sia realized what she'd left behind. Sia's downtown apartment was a study in minimalism. Not by choice, but by necessity. The furniture was sparse and secondhand, but everything was clean and organized, arranged with the care of someone who didn't have much, but took pride in what little she had. It was the apartment of someone who didn't plan to stay long, someone who was just passing through on her way to something better. In a shoebox under the bed, Lena found newspaper clippings and printed photos, pictures of herself from tabloids and gossip websites, some circled in red ink. A photo of her kissing a director she barely remembered, a shot of her leaving an AA meeting she'd never told anyone about. But it wasn't obsession. It was research, professional preparation. Someone else had been following the same trail. Lena found a thumb drive taped under the small desk, hidden where only someone looking very carefully would find it. Her hands shook as she plugged it into Sia's ancient laptop. The drive contained a single video file. She clicked play. Sia appeared on the screen, sitting on the same couch where Lena now sat. The lighting was dim, just a desk lamp casting harsh shadows across her face. She looked scared, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to burst through the door. "If you're watching this," Sia said, her voice barely above a whisper, "it means I'm dead. And if I'm dead, it means someone was trying to kill Lena Vale." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "I think it's someone close to her," Sia continued, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. "I heard Max arguing with someone on the phone yesterday. He was talking about some deal Lena refused to sign, something about international rights and image licensing. Big money stuff. He said, and I quote, 'If she won't sell it, we'll just inherit it.' The way he said inherit, I think he meant it literally." Sia paused, her voice catching. "I know she's not going to the party tonight. She told me she was staying home, needed a break from all the chaos. But I'm going anyway, dressed as her like I've done so many times on movie sets. If anyone can pull off being Lena Vale, it's me." She looked directly into the camera, and for a moment her fear was replaced by something else, something vulnerable and desperate. "I need to tell you something, in case this goes wrong. I've been in love with Lena for months. I know how that sounds, the hired help falling for the star, but she's not what people think. She's kind when no one's watching. She remembers my birthday. She asks about my family." Sia's voice grew softer. "I heard rumors that she used to experiment before her career took off, before she had to be so careful about her image." Tears started flowing down Sia's cheeks. "I thought maybe if I could save her life, if I could be her hero, maybe she'd see me differently. Maybe she'd give me a chance. I know it's stupid and selfish, but I can't help how I feel." She wiped her eyes and straightened up. "So I'm going to that party as her. I'm going to draw out whoever wants to hurt her. And maybe if I'm lucky enough to survive this, I'll finally tell her how I feel." Sia leaned closer to the camera, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "If something happens to me, please, tell her to run. Tell her not to trust anyone. And tell her that someone loved her enough to die for her. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her better." The video ended. Lena stared at the black screen for a long time, tears streaming down her face. Sia had known. She'd known she was walking into danger, and she'd done it anyway. Not just to protect someone she barely knew, but to protect someone she loved. Someone who'd never even realized that love existed. The irony was like a knife twisting in her chest. Sia had known intimate details about her life. Her birthday, her family, her kindness when no one was watching. Meanwhile, Lena had barely known Sia's last name. To her, Sia had been just another face in the background, another professional doing a job, another employee to be managed and forgotten. How many times had Sia stood just out of frame, watching Lena with those loving eyes, while Lena looked right through her? How many conversations had they had where Sia hung on every word while Lena's mind was elsewhere, thinking about scripts and schedules and her next career move? Sia had remembered her birthday. Lena couldn't even remember if she'd ever said thank you to the woman who died trying to save her life. The guilt was crushing, but underneath it was something else, something harder and sharper. Rage, not just at Max, not just at whoever had pulled the trigger, but at herself, at the system that had made her so self-absorbed, so disconnected from the real people in her life, that she'd missed someone's entire emotional world happening right in front of her. Sia had been in love with her for months, and Lena had been completely oblivious, living in her bubble of fame and manufactured importance while someone who actually mattered, someone who would have died for her, remained invisible. The woman who'd known her well enough to love her had been a stranger. The woman who'd cared enough to sacrifice everything had been just another name on a payroll. And now she was dead. Lena ran to the only person left in the world she trusted completely. Charlie Cruz had been her stunt double for 3 years, back when Lena still did action movies. Charlie was tough as nails, smart as a whip, and loyal to a fault. She was also the only person in Lena's life who'd never asked for anything in return. But more than that, Charlie had saved her life once before. Not from bullets or explosions, but from something that could have been just as deadly to her career. It had been 4 years ago, back when Lena was still trying to maintain her wholesome girl next door image. She'd been going through a rough patch, a brutal breakup, pressure from the studio, the suffocating weight of always having to be perfect. That night, she'd gone to an underground club in West Hollywood, the kind of place where celebrities could disappear into the shadows and be human for a few hours. She'd taken something, pills that someone had pressed into her hand, promising they'd make everything feel better. And for a while, they had. The music had been louder, the lights brighter, the freedom intoxicating. She'd kissed strangers, men, women, anyone who looked at her like she was just another person instead of a commodity. For the first time in months, she'd felt real. Until she'd noticed the camera flash. Through her drug-induced haze, she'd seen him, a sleazy paparazzi photographer with a telephoto lens, capturing every compromising moment. Her contract had a morality clause that would have destroyed her career if those photos ever saw daylight. TMZ would have paid millions for shots of America's sweetheart, high on party drugs and making out with random strangers. She'd tried to grab him, stumbling forward on unsteady legs, but she'd fallen hard onto the sticky club floor. The photographer had laughed, taunting her as he held the camera just out of reach. "Smile for the camera, sweetheart. This is gonna make me rich." That's when Charlie had appeared out of nowhere like an avenging angel. Lena had barely known her then. Charlie was just the new stunt double, hired for a few action sequences. But Charlie had seen what was happening and hadn't hesitated. She'd grabbed the photographer by his collar and slammed him against the wall so hard his teeth rattled. "Give me the camera," Charlie had said, her voice deadly calm. "Fuck you, bitch. This is public property." Charlie had smiled, the kind of smile that promised violence. Wrong answer. What followed was less of a fight and more of a demolition. Charlie had retrieved the camera, smashed it against the concrete floor, and then, in a move that still made Lena laugh, had stripped the photographer of his shoes and jeans, tossing them into the crowd of dancing bodies. The man had stood there in his underwear and socks, trying to maintain some shred of dignity, while Charlie winked at Lena and offered her a hand up. They'd never talked about that night again. But Lena had made sure Charlie got plenty of work after that, and their professional relationship had slowly grown into something deeper. Trust. Real trust. Built on a foundation of shared secrets and mutual respect. Charlie opened the door of her modest apartment in Silver Lake wearing sweatpants and a tank top. A fresh bandage wrapped around her left arm from her latest job. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had the kind of tan that came from actually being outdoors instead of from expensive salon treatments. "Jesus Christ," Charlie said, her eyes going wide. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah," Lena said, pushing past her into the apartment. "I noticed." Charlie closed the door and turned the deadbolt. "What the hell is going on?" Lena told her everything, about Sia, about Max, about the insurance money, and the voicemail warning. Charlie listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "That son of a bitch," Charlie said when Lena finished. "I never liked him. Always gave me the creeps." "I need your help," Lena said. Charlie didn't hesitate. "What do you need?" Two days later, Charlie positioned herself outside Matsuhisa with a professional camera and microphone. She dressed the part, sharp blazer, press badge, the confident demeanor of someone who belonged there. When Max emerged from his black SUV, she approached with a practiced smile. "Mr. Cooper, I'm Sarah Chen from Entertainment Weekly. Could I get a quick comment about Lena Vale's tragic passing?" Max's face immediately shifted into his public relations mask. The perfect blend of grief and professionalism. "Of course. Lena was like family to me. Her death is a tremendous loss for the industry and for everyone who knew her." Charlie nodded sympathetically, holding the microphone steady. What Max didn't know was that she was live streaming directly to a social media account she'd created that morning. She'd spent hours before the interview sending anonymous tips to gossip blogs and Hollywood outlets. Exclusive. Major entertainment manager to be confronted about client's suspicious death. Live at 2 p.m. She'd promised insider information that would blow the lid off Hollywood's darkest secrets. The viewer count was already climbing as word spread through entertainment circles that this was a live stream they couldn't afford to miss. "You managed her career for several years," Charlie continued. "I imagine there were significant financial arrangements involved. Insurance policies, film rights, that sort of thing." Max's smile flickered slightly. "Well, yes, of course. That's standard in this business. We always want to protect our clients' interests." "Including a $20 million life insurance policy?" The color drained from Max's face. Where did you hear that?" "Is it true that Lena had refused to sign over international licensing rights to her image just weeks before her death?" Max took a step back, his composure cracking. "I don't know what you're implying, but..." "I'm not implying anything," Charlie said, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "I'm asking direct questions about a very convenient financial arrangement." This interview is over. Max turned to walk away, but froze when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Hello, Max." He spun around, his face going white as he saw Lena standing there in broad daylight, very much alive. She'd dyed her hair dark and was wearing sunglasses, but there was no mistaking who she was. "Lena?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But you're dead." "Clearly not," she said, stepping closer. "Though someone certainly tried to make that happen." The live stream viewer count was exploding. Comments were flying by too fast to read. Lena Lives had started trending within minutes. "The police already have evidence, Max," Lena continued, her voice steady and cold. "Sia's voicemail warning me about you. The insurance policy I never knew existed. Your convenient motive for wanting me dead." Max's eyes darted between Lena and Charlie's camera, panic setting in as he realized what was happening. This is some kind of setup. You can't prove anything." "Actually," Charlie said, still filming, "we're live streaming right now. Thousands of people are watching you explain how you tried to kill your client for $20 million worth of insurance money." Max's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, rage, and finally desperate calculation. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said, his voice low and threatening. "There are people involved in this who—" He caught himself, realizing he was about to confess on camera to a live audience. "Who what, Max?" Lena pressed. "Who did you hire to kill me? Who actually pulled the trigger that killed Sia instead?" Max turned and ran, pushing through the small crowd that had gathered to watch the spectacle. But the damage was done. His panicked reaction, his near confession, his obvious guilt, it was all captured in high definition and broadcast to the world. Within hours, number Lena Lives was trending globally. The live stream had been viewed millions of times. Internet detectives were already digging into Max's financial records, his phone logs, his business associates. The story had taken on a life of its own, spreading faster than any traditional investigation could move. The police, faced with overwhelming public pressure and viral evidence of Max's guilt, arrested him that evening on suspicion of insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. Charlie texted Lena 4 words: "We got him good." But Lena knew it wasn't over. Max might have been the one with the motive, but he wasn't the one who'd actually pulled the trigger. Someone else had done the dirty work, and that person was still out there. Still, it was a start. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Lena felt like she was the one in control of the story. A week later, Lena walked into a small radio studio in Pasadena, under a new name and a completely different look. She'd kept the dark hair and simple clothes, trading her carefully crafted image for something real. She sat in front of the microphone, headphones covering her ears, and spoke her truth into the void. "I was never the woman you thought I was," she said, her voice calm and steady for the first time in years. "The Lena Vale you knew was a character I played, a role I performed every single day. She was beautiful and glamorous and perfect, and she was completely fake." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But the woman who's talking to you right now, she's real, and she's just getting started." The interview lasted 2 hours. She talked about the pressure of fame, the isolation of living in a fishbowl, the way the industry chewed up young women and spit them out when they were no longer profitable. She talked about Sia, about the courage it took to walk into danger to protect someone else. "Before I finished today," Lena said, her voice growing stronger. "I want to announce something. I'm establishing a foundation in memory of Sia Martin, the woman who died in my place. The Sia Martin Foundation will provide financial support and career guidance for aspiring performers who don't have industry connections or family money. People like Sia, who work twice as hard for half the recognition." She paused, thinking of the woman who'd loved her enough to die for her. Sia believed in protecting people. She believed in doing the right thing, even when it was dangerous. This foundation will be her legacy, helping others achieve the dreams she never got to see fulfilled. Because everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be more than just another face in the background. She didn't reveal her location. She didn't say whether she planned to come back. She just told the truth, maybe for the first time in her adult life. They never found the murder weapon. They never uncovered who Max had hired to do his dirty work. The investigation continued, and while Lena's livestream confrontation had provided compelling evidence of Max's guilt, the case against the actual killer remained frustratingly incomplete. The police had Sia's voicemail warning, the insurance policy evidence, and Max's panicked near confession on camera. It was enough to convict him of insurance fraud and conspiracy, but not enough to identify or prosecute the person who'd actually pulled the trigger. Lena wrestled with this reality every day. Part of her wanted to come forward, to testify, to see the investigation through to its conclusion. But she knew that revealing herself would paint a target on her back. The real killer was still out there, and Max's conviction hadn't changed that fact. If anything, it might have made her more dangerous to whoever had done the actual killing. Was Max's punishment enough? 15 years in federal prison, his reputation destroyed, his assets frozen. It was something. But it wasn't justice for Sia. It wasn't closure for the woman who died believing she was saving someone she loved. Some nights, Lena lay awake wondering if she was being a coward. Other nights, she reminded herself that staying alive was the only way to honor Sia's sacrifice. Dead martyrs couldn't establish foundations or change the industry that had failed them both. And perhaps more importantly, Max's conviction sent a message to the industry. The days of treating people as disposable commodities were numbered. Lena Vale stayed dead, at least officially. But the woman who had taken her place, the one with the dark hair and the quiet voice and the determination to live life on her own terms, the one who'd learned that real love sometimes came from the most unexpected places, and that being truly seen was worth more than being famous. She was alive, she was safe, and she was finally, authentically herself. The Sia Martin Foundation received its first major donation within hours of the radio interview, an anonymous gift of $20 million, exactly the amount of the insurance policy that had never been claimed. Somewhere in Los Angeles, in a city built on dreams and broken promises, a woman who'd once been a star was learning how to be human for the very first time. The story wasn't over, it was just beginning. So, the body double was a bit of a curveball, a longer, meaner experiment. Now I've got one question. Did it hit? Was this the kind of slow burn chaos you want more of? Or should I get back to what I do best? Micro doses of mayhem packed with dopamine jolts and psychological shrapnel? Let me know. Seriously, drop a comment or hit me up on my website. The address is in the podcast description. I read everything. Notes, rants, fan theories, cryptic threats. Don't be shy. Until next time, keep ducking bullets. I'll be back next week with another tiny tale, probably involving babes, betrayal, and blood that won't wash off, no matter how hard you try.